Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out.
Hello. Hi. It's so nice to see you all, and there are some familiar faces in here. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Well, I do have to start with a confession because we're starting strong. I intended to read your book over a week in little sips, and I read it in, I think, a sitting and a half. I did have to get up for a croissant. It was very important. It was very important to fuel. And it was almost this sort of like propulsive need to know what happened next. And I'm curious about if the writing process was that same way for you, if it just kind of poured out of you like that, or if it was like, you know, what's that person who pushes the rock up the hill?
Sisyphus.
Yes. Was it that?
Sisyphus.
Yes.
Actually, I had been researching media culture, child development, neurobiology, industry protocols for about 7 years.
Sorry, technical difficulties.
The show must go on.
The show must go on.
And I had put together a proposal for a different version of the book, which would have been a bone dry research paper. And I know there are some people in here who would love that as much as I do.
They're frothing
However,
at the mouth.
mainstream media likes to measure things by different metrics. And also I recognized that sharing my own personal story would allow people to have a more immersive experience with these themes. So I reorganized the proposal and I spent about 14 months writing. I did bring in a writing supervisor. She was essential for understanding how to structure the narrative arcs. And yes, I'm forever indebted to Anna. And I thought I knew the story I was going to tell.
Because it's yours.
But it turns out, for one, that our minds are full of contradictions, and your memory is subjective perception at best, a complete mess at worst. And I had a lot of decisions to make about points of view, about what I would disclose, about whose names I would name openly. But you know what I will say is, I'll give you two things.
I'm ready.
I'm just going to riff for the rest of it.
Let's go.
You asked one question. I will say 3/4 of the way through, I uncovered documents about my childhood that were completely contradictory to the story I understood about my own life.
Yeah.
And so I had to re-examine things in real time. And that's actually in the book. So you'll see a section where I'm reckoning with new information. And that was Sisyphus.
Yeah. Well, I have a reply to this, which is going to sound silly, but my cousin sent me a meme on Twitter. He DM'd
Love
me.
where you're headed.
Yeah. So, and what it kind of, it's one of those things that's like, haha, funny, but it also hit me right in the throat. And it was about how the past doesn't really exist anymore except in our heads. It's what we create. It's the story that we create of...
And our nervous systems.
And our nervous systems. Yes, we'll get there. But it's interesting. Like I quipped earlier that it's your story, but it's also the story that you told yourself and that was told to you. And that might not actually be kind of the story that as it really happened. So I'm curious also, was there a part of you that ever hesitated about whether you wanted to tell this story in as much detail as you do?
I didn't need to write this book for my own catharsis. I have spent 20 years in therapy.
Yep.
And thankfully now I have a community of people who are trustworthy, and we hold each other mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially. You know, that's community. So my reason for being so candid is because you deserve to know the rest of the story of how the industry ecosystem operates. Because when you're presented, you know, a partial narrative or just the facade, it's actually a disservice to everyone. It means that the cultural myths were all shaped by, we'll use fame for one. If you only hold the person who's propped up, either glorifying them or dehumanizing them, whatever you want to do, there's still an illusion of separation that you're disconnected. Then that's actually not going to help us graduate beyond this repeated narrative we see with celebrities having some kind of downward spiral and then a comeback redemption story. I mean, it's the same media arc.
Yeah.
I don't know about y'all, but I'm bored of it.
Yeah.
You deserve more. Everyone in here deserves better. And we need to be reckoning with and redesigning our systems anyway. So you might as well just have all the information, and then we can co-design a better cultural standard together. So you aren't just presented with the next media narrative that people in power are forcing you to ingest. Like, I want everyone, wherever you're located in the ecosystem, behind the camera, consuming at home, to be a part of how we redesign this narrative.
I like that you describe it as an ecosystem, because we are a part of it, even if we were, never starred on screen with you. But let's talk a little bit about the story as it happened to you in the memoir. Let's take it back to the beginning. The book opens with this talent competition. You're 6 years old, you're precocious. It's a lot all at once. And one thing that really struck me from those opening chapters is how quickly the sort of like pressure sets in, the comparing to other kids that are there. And it's, you have to remind yourself, this is a 6-year-old who's experiencing all that. So, how formative were those early experiences in the industry in kind of shaping what came next?
Woo-wee, yes. So just to situate this in terms of childhood development, stages of development, I'm sure some people in here may be already familiar with these stages. I see some nods. Yes, these are my people. It's so refreshing to be here and not to only have people in here who are like, just do the dance. Like, I can. I can.
There will be no dancing tonight unless you would like me to do it.
That's right. But now to be able to be like, we are adults with fully formed frontal lobes, and we can engage in discourse. Wow, critical thinking! So developmentally speaking, whatever experiences we have become our first map of the world, and whatever gets presented to us, modeled for us, experienced by us is then, normalized. So if you think about some of the basic pillars of, healthy childhood developmental trajectory, you see things like offering enough consistency or stability, some semblance of a routine or structure where a child can, visit places outside of their comfort zone, or maybe feel challenged sometimes, but not chronically to the point where they can't have some level of stability. And I know that I'm speaking to people in here who were not in entertainment, but you'll relate to this because of family dynamics, because of communities, because of XYZ. So every aspect of the industry disrupted what people would recommend you provide for a young person developing. And other areas in terms of identity formation, I'm reenacting quite traumatizing material on a regular basis as an actor. And at 6 or 7 or 8 years old, you don't have your own sense of identity formed yet, nor do you have the cognitive apparatus to differentiate between fantasy and reality. And so there are a lot of blurred lines. And then overlay that with the fact that the adults in the room are asking you to do these things repeatedly, and you will be rewarded the harder you cry.
Right.
The more deeply you access that emotion. And then the reward is reenacting it again and again and again on set with strangers who are now pretending that this is a real experience. It's quite a confusing, that's just one. I mean, you'll see in the book there are numerous variables here that are distinct to the industry, but cumulatively have such an impact that then lead to young people, a young mind, a young body, developing whatever coping strategy it can find, for better and worse.
Well, it's so surreal to hear you talk about this, because I was someone who spent a lot of time watching, kids on Disney Channel. I really wanted to be a child actor, and I
I wanted to be Hillary Duff.
Yeah, who doesn't? Who doesn't want to be Hillary Duff? And I begged my mom. She's actually here today, and she said no. And I'm very grateful because I don't. The things that you were talking about as a child, like there's so much that can influence you. But I'm curious, like how much that element of what you're projecting as a child actor to other children is part of the model.
Let's talk about
Let's talk about it.
Because it would be one thing if I had conscious agency and understood the implications of participating in a highly visible space. It would be another thing if I was under contract and my name, image, and likeness were owned by a media conglomerate whose messaging is informed by profit-driven incentives, but also these outstanding cultural myths. And I'm just gonna, it's Boston, so we can go here.
Yes, we can. I don't know where we're going, but we can can go here.
So certain media companies are in bed with the government and military, and they're producing these projects. Now I feel like I'm conspiracy.
Someone's gonna drop from the rafters.
I know.
Come take you out.
There's a camera filming this, and
you left your tinfoil hat in the green room.
Honestly, I've been working on resourcing myself so I can find other jobs. And if I'm inevitably fired because of the material that's in the book, I'm like, I'll find other ways. Fire me. But the reality is, there are deeply embedded messages in each of these projects. And I, as the actor, most of the time, I'm only looking at a project at face value. I'm thinking about it artistically, creatively. I'm also thinking about the hierarchy of power dynamics on set, where I'm here to serve the director's vision, the writer's vision, the company's vision. Very rarely do I hear performers asking themselves, does this stereotype of this person holding this certain identity need to be perpetuated on camera yet again? No, it's usually, I'm just trying to get a job.
Yeah.
And this is the only audition presented for me to be, to have a shot at. So there are so many micro, meso, macro layers to this. And I haven't seen someone unpack it in that way that would empower not only the artist to know what you're participating in, but also the audience.
Yeah, and then the audience often is other children.
Right.
Who are receiving the sort of same messaging.
So in order for me to be hired, I aspire to, this is my, 7-year-old thought process, relatively speaking. Because 7-year-olds are also just trying to get their basic survival needs met, right?
Yes, yeah.
So they're like, okay, yes, I'll do whatever you say. And I think I want to be a good person. That sounds better than being a bad person.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know what I want for dinner.
Spaghetti?
Maybe, probably beans and wieners. If anyone had kids' kitchen, beans and wieners. We had a lot of beans and wieners growing up. So for, my younger self just trying to book the role, I then want to do my best to adhere to the standards. Yeah. And of course, you can see how when we have diet and fitness culture, beauty standards, how the young person is then going, okay, sure, I'll lose or gain weight. Yes, I'll modify. And I remember there was a part, maybe 13, 14, 15 years old, where I started to realize, wait a second, I didn't have the language for it, but I'm complicit in perpetuating this standard. But now what do I do if my livelihood depends on it and I have 15 adults
depending on you,
depending on me to feed their children off of the, checks they're commissioning from my jobs.
Yeah.
So it's complicated.
It is. In short.
It was super fun.
It was super fun.
Yeah. Really lighthearted.
A lot of red carpets.
That's right.
Rewinding a little bit. You moved to Los Angeles after this talent competition. You're thrown into the churn of auditions, which you've talked a little bit about, the also constant rejection. That sounds like I'm saying that you personally were getting a lot of constant rejection.
I was.
You were, but it wasn't like you. It was just, it's a hard industry to make it in. And in the background, and you alluded to this earlier, you're also dealing with this really volatile home situation. You've got a stepfather that's abusive, and your mother struggles with alcoholism. And I was really struck by this contrast between having to perform perfection in these like professional spaces while dealing with dysfunction in the home. And I don't really know, what does that do to a child and then to the adult that they become?
Obviously, I can only speak for myself in this particular answer. What comes to mind is that whenever you're experiencing something, to quote Resmaa Menakem, that's too much, too soon, too intense, without the appropriate tools, resources, community, safe attachments to cope and kind of complete that threat response cycle, it stays in, it gets stored somewhere in your system. And so after a certain point, and it happened pretty quickly. I would say actually probably before I turned 8. The coping strategy that I subconsciously relied on was dissociation.
Yeah.
And to clarify, a lot of times when we talk about dissociation, I think culturally at the moment, we speak to it in the form of disconnecting from the self. And that is a category of dissociative experiences. There's also another category that focuses on compartmentalization, where maybe aspects of yourself are online in certain moments and situations, offline in others. And I think I had a combination of disconnection from self, of course, like core needs. You're not thinking about whether you're hungry or full or listening to your body. You're now a product. You have to be ready for use at any time. And then additionally, the compartmentalization of, well, now I'm here, so home doesn't even exist. I'm just a puppet for whatever your aim is. So I didn't realize how thick of, how calloused I was and how dissociated I had to be to get through that kind of schedule and pursuit, which is why it's bittersweet. I do feel grief because I'm like, wow, when people mention, hey, I loved that performance or I connected with this character, I can recall what happened,
but not how you
from
felt.
the hypervigilant state of needing to clock details, but not necessarily the somatic experience of the memory. So now what's so healing is that I'm here, I'm embodied. Here come the tears.
Okay.
And so I'll remember this moment here and here and here. And I wish that for everyone, because I know all of you at some point, for some reason, have had to check out for a while. And it's such a process to rebuilding that trust.
Yeah.
And to finding environments where you actually can be vulnerable safely.
Yeah. And also, I mean, you're talking about disassociating. That was like actually a professional requirement. You're being asked to be somebody else as a child. And I mean, I'm sitting here as an adult thinking about you as a child or the child you never really got to be. But do you feel like the adults around you were, on the sets of these shows, involved in some ways you as the product? Do you feel like they were at all concerned about what they were doing to you or kids like you? Or do you think they even, like, it's not even a thing in people's minds?
Such an important question, because I think a lot of folks go to is, where were the parents? And why are these protocols still, in place? And the reality is, the entertainment industry was built by and for adults. So we weren't thinking about developmentally appropriate experiences for children. And most people in the industry are not licensed trauma therapists.
No.
And so they might excel in their sphere and simply not have the essential information for building safe workplaces, especially for the unique psychological variables for being on a set where you're creating narrative. That's not just for talent. It's also the crew, of course, and editors who are sitting in editing bays for 12 hours a day, dark room, which already is not helpful for your neurobiology, but also maybe looking at graphic images and having to decide which will have the most impact on an audience. And maybe they have no one to talk to, or maybe the subject matter hits home and it's now activating something for them, and they have to look at that material over and over and over and be reminded of something, right? And then you at home are watching, and maybe we aren't yet presenting content warnings in the way that we could be, which we'll get to. So I think it's more so what I've observed, in absence of the necessary front loading of information so that people can make informed decisions. And I bet you if people knew and understand it from this angle, their perspective would shift. I will give people the benefit of the doubt. In my experience, most people I worked with were well-intended, kind-hearted, hardworking, and thought that the only thing that mattered in terms of creating a safe set for youth was just to try not to cuss and to make sure that you got your 3 hours of school in.
3 hours. That's remarkable.
Well, I mean, we can break down the education system.
But we've got we've had a number of really great audience questions, but this one I think kind of connects to what you were talking about. Someone is a big fan of Cheaper by the Dozen, and they're asking, were there any of your child movies that felt healthy, or at least like not detrimental to your development? Like, was there ever a film that you felt, or a project that you felt supported on?
Sure. This is where we have to hold multiple truths at once. Interpersonally, there were so many beautiful interactions with the other castmates. And there was something, of course, so satisfying to see the finished product after bonding with people for 3 months. And there are many positive memories. So I'm not interested in trying to like throw everything out here. And because I couldn't see the end result of this, I just simply didn't know the longstanding impact that level of stress was having on my body, including the exciting kind of stress, right? So it doesn't always mean that this challenge was negative or that the experience felt exploitative in the moment. It's that cumulatively, when I was fortunate enough to book multiple jobs that filmed one after the other, it simply meant no days off for me. But in the moment, subjectively, yes, there were positive memories being made. And I now am diagnosed with chronic illness, and those aren't disconnected.
Right. Do you feel that there is sort of a pressure to kind of pick between narratives? Like, you had a great time as a child star and the industry was fine, and you had a really good time, and this destroyed your life like it has so many other child stars. Do you still feel that there is that expectation that you choose a narrative?
Yes, I can see it by the headlines. Press coverage. Ugh, so silly, right?
As press, I have to say,
okay,
we do
please.
try.
Asterisk, some of you do try.
Fair enough. I'll take it.
Because this conversation feels markedly different already from many of the headlines I've seen. And I understand. It's not my first rodeo. I knew exactly what I was saying to every single reporter. And you'll see, if you haven't read the book yet, you'll see how calculated my responses are and why they're so calculated, and why, thankfully, I've been able to have a pristine-ish reputation for 20 plus years because I've been playing chess with you all this whole time. thankfully.
Yeah.
But also, it's now that I'm a mental health practitioner,
You're
I'm
like,
like, thank God my reputation was that clean, because
Yeah.
no one would trust me to provide care. Or maybe you would trust me because you'd be like, okay, you're human. Either way. But yes, there's such a binary, right? Either you are the absolute F up of a child star and you're living out this tragedy, or you're unscathed.
Right.
And the reality is, like, we are all semi well adjusted, and we're inhabiting systems that continually need to be updated. As we know better, we get to do better.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's going to be, it's also conversations I have with the largest media companies in the world.
Right.
When I'm in the room with them and I'm saying, I'm not here to name, shame, blame you solely.
Yeah.
I know that you did not establish these protocols yourself. You inherited them when you became a part of this company. And now I'm offering you, I'm inviting you to open up the ways that you approach, establishing norms and standards on sets. And I promise you, it doesn't have to ruin your bottom line. Like it's not that complicated to humanize people, except
You would
it
think.
is when you live in capitalism.
We said no dancing, but we didn't say no singing. But something you said just now, and I'm going to go to another audience question, but I just want to comment on this. The use of the word inheritance, I think, is really interesting, because it is an inheritance. And in some way, the inheritance is the system, and it's also sort of the trauma that's being experienced by these young performers. And I like thinking of it in that way, because you can choose to do different things with your inheritance.
I love what you're saying, and it reminds me that just as persistent as trauma and oppressive systems can be, so we too can be as persistent in how we're navigating them and interacting with them. And we must be, because if it's a non-neutral playing field,
right?
You know.
I do know.
Yeah,
I do. Unfortunately, know.
I've read some of your work.
Oh, you didn't say that backstage. I would have prepared myself for that. Well, moving on from that, one of our audience members is wondering if you could go back in time and give your younger self some advice. This is a big ask, because you have to also phrase it for a 6-year-old. What would it be? I know when you say the number out loud, it's a 6-year-old child. What would your advice be?
My instinct is that younger Alyson does not need any more advice. Younger Alyson needs an attuned presence, someone who just says, hey, what are you thinking about?
Yeah.
Hey, what's going on? And specifically someone who understands what some call a play-based childhood, not just literal play in a sandbox, but spaces where you have access to enough privacy, and anonymity, perhaps, where you can experiment with identity, you can make mistakes, and it's not permanently, digitized online, or you're not permanently glued to the narrative.
Yeah.
So I think I would just want to share space with younger Alyson and make sure they know that I'm not on their payroll, and that they have nothing to prove to me.
Yeah.
And I will say, it reminds me of someone who you'll read about in the book named Nick Cooper, who was my vocal coach. And technically I was paying him for the lessons, but he provided a version of that
space.
And without him, I don't know where I would be, who I would be. Similarly, Kate, who you'll meet in the book, I think redirected my life because of her attuned presence. Presence.
Yeah.
I mean, teach with your life, use words when necessary, right? presence. That wasn't my quote, but I don't remember whose it was. Sorry.
Attribution, very important journalistic
Yeah, I'm
principle.
like, my bad, failed the citation.
Failed citation. We'll forgive it.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about systems and big forces in your life, and one that we haven't chatted about yet is religion and faith.
So fun tonight.
So fun tonight. But it's in your adolescence or your teenagehood, and I want to come back to that chapter of your life if we can. You become really drawn to Christianity. It's a guiding force in your life. And I want to read a quote from the book about this. Sorry, I'm going to confront you with your own writing. I have to do this for your own good and for ours. You said, "I was particularly drawn to sermons about keeping my mind and body as a clean temple, which fused wonderfully with my industry protocol of being in tip-top shape. Self-discipline and sacrifice were important parts of following God and making it to Hollywood." So I'm wondering if you could just reflect a little on religion and sort of, what that meant to you in your life, because I don't want to belittle it, but that quote I think speaks pretty loudly too.
Yes, and we have to parse so many things.
Because
there's faith, there's spirituality, there's religion, there's dogma and indoctrination, there's phenomenology, your phenomenological experience of said domains. And what feels important to name first is that the particular church congregations I was a part of were deeply influenced by all of the isms in the U.S. So, to name a few, individualism, that played out in the congregation in terms of this actually isn't just geared, it doesn't just take place in religious spaces. Spirituality in the U.S. often is about self-focused manifestation, wealth accumulation, prosperity gospel, as some might call it, whereas many other communities, practices, etc., are communal focused. So individualism, of course, capitalism plays a role here too, and specifically in how we view the body. Yeah. So if the body is something to control or to dominate, whether you controlling your own body or power systems asserting control over, the body then becomes a project to complete, or an object to fix.
To refine to a certain end.
And so it becomes interesting, I see in certain faith practices, this kind of, it starts with the intention of purifying the heart, but then it starts to get in bed with, and it's conflated with some of these other isms in our society. So I don't just put that on religion, but faith, man, we have to be so mindful in spaces of faith. You have human heart, psyches, and bodies in your hands, and someone who's actually opening up and saying, "I'm searching for truth. I'm also maybe aspiring to obey this authority figurehood, however you conceive God to be, but it's so vulnerable and it needs such care. And I don't know that faith spaces, just like educational spaces, just like industrial spaces, are yet equipped to steward those journeys.
Do you feel like in some way it was trying to fill some sort of need for like guidance or structure?
Absolutely. Yeah. What I recognized is that God, and this is my 13-year-old version of God.
Yeah.
So since, much has expanded. Chapter 18. But chapter 2. So, younger self, I noticed that Hollywood was such an overbearing presence, and I needed something to be bigger than Hollywood.
I see.
And so God was all of it bigger than Hollywood. It also helped me not internalize, when I was rejected for a role and or what's wrong with me. Suddenly God had a bigger plan. There was some kind of divine orchestration, so I could outsource my trust. And so it served a lot of functions.
Yeah.
And now it's expanded and shifted dramatically, but I'm grateful.
Right.
And for some of the spaces where the community was welcoming, whereas at home it was really tumultuous. So there's beauty threaded into all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a question here that you were talking a little bit about educational spaces and spaces. I'm kind of thinking of like where there's influence on people and on kids. And we have someone who's a preschool director and is asking, how can they help change the culture? This is a big ask for you. You gotta.
Could you imagine if
you
if
have
I
to
claimed
solve the
have
culture? But what can this person do to help change the culture around social media and sharing? Because there's kids, they all, and I'm going to talk about this a little later if we can. Kids, they all want to be YouTube stars, but they have no idea what that's like.
Sure. Is Leah here by any chance? Leah,
oh my
hi.
God, did you just divine the name of this person who asked the question?
I'm actually going to say I'm not the expert in this area, but Leah Plunkett, who's in the audience, is a researcher, a lawyer, a teacher, and she has a book called Sharenting, which unpacks. Gosh, Leah, do you feel comfortable just giving your own blurb in your own words? Would that be okay? Yeah, thank you. Welcome,
thank you, Leah. Yeah. And you can hunt down Leah after while you wait in the signing line.
Well, I won't volunteer Leah to chat with everyone, but you can definitely get Leah's book, Sharenting. And Dr. Devorah Heitner is another person whose work I admire. She has a book called Growing Up in Public. And I love that she offers a way to align with the young person. So instead of just trying to remove them from digital spaces or control their behavior, it becomes more of a mentorship dynamic, and you can provide the age-appropriate information at the time, and they can feel like they're a part of the decision being made. So I recommend Dr. Devorah's work as well.
Great. Well, I received a directive from Yon Hai.
From God.
From God or the producers in the back. And they have told me that we have to move at a clip-clop pace.
Sorry.
No, it's actually we don't. We have plenty of time. But this is just my sidebar to say I'm skipping ahead a little bit to some of the ugly patches, and you decide you're getting help. Yeah. Things cannot continue as they've been, and you're getting help. You say, I want help, and the response is kind of like a no, or maybe later, and it's really hard to get that help. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about why and how that kind of fits into the systems that we've been talking about.
Sure. Well, with the industry, I'm sure people in here know what it's like if you skip that job interview that might have been the one, or you're just one day late on that deadline, and suddenly your reputation suffers. Suddenly you're not getting the same opportunities for promotion. Suddenly you're seeing these, tangible consequences play out. And in Hollywood, attention is presented as the greatest currency. And so if you're unable to be available at everyone's beck and call, then you're out of sight, you're out of mind.
Yeah.
And once you lose people's attention in Hollywood, it's hard to gain it back. In fact, I was working the entire time, but I can't tell you how many articles I've read where it's like, Alyson makes a comeback. Like, I didn't go anywhere.
I've been back.
Yeah, right? Like, I'm here working, but not every job is the Barbie movie. Sorry. Just like not everyone is just the CEO, face of the company. Like, most of us are doing all of the jobs that make that possible, but we don't, we're not in the same position. So I don't think that people realized how desperately in need of help I was at the time.
Yeah.
But I knew that I was at a pivotal point where I might be forsaking my health and longevity if I wait any longer. But if I'm being honest, my original intention for getting help was so that I could repair myself as quickly as possible and jump back on the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
It was because treatment provided such a shift in environment where people who were not on my payroll were presenting questions for reflection. I could process, express, release everything that had been stored, that those threads started being pulled. Yeah. So I'm deeply grateful, but I know that not everyone can afford to slow down enough to just heal in a cocoon like that. Yeah. So some of us have to sprinkle in our healing, during your 5-minute bathroom break between meetings where you're
I hope it's longer than 5.
Well, yeah, sometimes you do need more than 5 minutes in the bathroom. That's right.
Yeah, sometimes.
And sometimes it's just to cry.
Yes, and that's also important.
Yeah.
So you end up getting help, and after you spend time in a rehab facility for an eating disorder. That's correct, right?
That's correct.
That's correct. I'm like, did I read that right? Yes.
Yeah, but while I was there, they found out I had other issues.
Yeah,
too.
well, So, you start to look at your life through this newish lens, and that brings up some questions for you about your sexuality. And that's also another pivotal moment for you in your life. And I'm curious, did that feel scary, or was it kind of a relief? Well, big questions tonight.
When you're in my church congregation and you're uncovering your sexuality, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
But you know what? Something beautiful I want to highlight is that in treatment, that was the beginning of the journey back to being embodied, or embodied for the first time in a long time. And when I was no longer dissociating, that meant I could connect to desire. And I thought growing up I was just focused on work and I'm straight, but I'm just busy. And
straight
I was
but busy.
Yeah.
Alternate title for the memoir.
I do have a long list of alternate titles. It's pretty good. I wish I brought my phone. They're pretty fun. One of them is A Try Hard Tries Less.
Ooh.
That was good. That was good.
For the paperback, maybe.
Yeah. Ooh, yes. We have multiple editions. So yeah, I when I started to recognize, I actually have interests in people, and these people are women, that was terrifying. Because also, queer people in here will get it. Yeah. When you're like, wow, I wasn't nervous at all to talk to boys, or insert, whatever. And the compulsive heteronormative version of whatever the story is. And then talking to a woman.
Your hands are actually shaking. Remembering.
It's how it was.
Yeah.
It's how it was. And a woman who wanted to watch Orange is the New Black together. I was like, this is so hot. I need to get out of here, but I want to be right here. How are you feeling over there? I'm fine.
Yeah. Just need this whole tray of ice cubes for no reason.
That's right. That is a great trick. Way to know.
You just pour the whole tray out. Well, I hate to take it from here to a downer, but I will. I want to read another quote from your book.
There are uppers in the book.
There are uppers. There are uppers. You just got to get to the end. Just got to get to the end.
Keep reading. If it's doing this, just keep reading.
So you say, I was living under an invisible dome that had been imposed on me, and I was brainwashed to be submissive and produce work that earned other people money or entertained them. I was raised so that I did not know how to survive outside the dome, and I believed I was pursuing my own dream, but there were puppet masters dictating my fate. I mean, it's stunning to hear that. And your story isn't a one-off, right? You know, we've seen other former child stars come forward, just anyone who's been involved in the industry in that capacity at a young age. And it seems like the conversation has changed a little bit from the ways that we would talk about young people who had experienced the trauma of being famous. What do you think it is about the moment that we're in that's allowed for that kind of openness of conversation? Or do you think that it's always been there, but people just, weren't listening?
I'll focus on two things. And they connect to the same point. The digital landscape has allowed people to remove the middle person. And to claim, to own their narrative in a way, for better and worse, for all of us online. And so that allows for more transparency. We'll just keep it simple. Allows for more transparency. Building on that, I think experiences that were once reserved for public figures, entertainers, things like navigating parasocial relationships, issues with privacy and safety, mental health challenges related to tech use or overuse. These are experiences that anyone with a Wi-Fi connection, anyone with a social media profile can have. And so I think as it is closer to home, it's easier to empathize with, to no one's surprise. And so I think it's allowing for these conversations to take place in a fresh way. And I think we're seeing the impact that having your... Because now it's a data conversation as well, right? So things that we once thought were just kind of like harmless shares become track records. Yeah. And that's another conversation for another time. But it's all essential for us to know about. So I'm encouraged by what's happening.
But the flip side of that, and this is something I really want us to talk about, is that with all this information, this new way of accessing data, is that there's a lot of kids who are famous now on the internet at a really young age because they're part of family vlogging, channels on TikTok, Instagram, and the laws that apply, with what few they are, that apply to child workers typically are concentrated on acting, and there aren't the same level of protections for kids who are getting famous on the internet. Does that sort of new frontier of child fame concern you in a different way?
Absolutely. What you're opening up is a conversation around how we conceptualize children's rights and autonomy, family business, family law, corporate practice. So there are a lot of different tendrils here. And for one, how we tend to give families the benefit of the doubt that whoever is at the helm has the best interest of the child in mind. That simply, we know statistically, and from lived experience, that not only are there homes where the adult or caregiver is unsafe, but also none of us were presented a concrete manual on digital citizenship. So the adults themselves, we ourselves, are still trying to figure out how we set proper boundaries with tech hygiene, tech use, etc. So how we need to reconceptualize how we design these policies. Yeah. Another aspect that comes up for me, and this is more related to traditional entertainment, but actually, it crosses over. I find it fascinating that we use the term child stardom, and we never say child laborer.
Yeah.
And let me build on it.
All right, let's go.
And conveniently, federal law, for those who don't know, actually exempts child entertainers from child labor laws. So I know.
It's all the dots are dotting.
It's on each state to establish that policy. And there are still 17 states who don't have a single law in place for child entertainers specifically. And now, of course, because of the digital landscape, we know that children in every state are participating in these kinds of projects, willingly, unwillingly. And then I could go on for hours on this. There's some stuff that's in the book that you'll see, but highly recommend Leah's work. Also, Chris McCarty founded an organization called Quit Clicking Kids. And they have some great material that you can comb through. And you'll start to see some policies being presented, or some bills being presented this fall. And if I can, Leah, just stop me if I say anything I'm not allowed to say. So I've had the privilege to observe some of the meetings with Uniform Law Commission, and they're starting to establish terms and definitions that will better protect this subset of children. And a few things I've realized: we need to design laws that focus on children as consumers. We need to focus on designing laws for the children who are the producers of media. And because digital media is not the same as auditioning for a role and knowing that you're going to a set, and it can be your just lived experience being shared, there are ways that we can adjust the terminology to include phrases like life story telling services, so that the children who don't know at all what's going on will still be protected in the same way that the child who wants to be a performer is protected. Yeah. And so we have a lot of factors there: finances, revoking consent upon turning 18. So many things that I would love to see happen, but I know because of our current system, we have to kind of tackle it one thing at a time. And if you didn't know, the current landscape, child protections in many ways are being rolled back. So if and when you see these bills being introduced, of course, do your research on who's behind them. If you see Leah's name, listen and do it. But if you see, some of these names I've mentioned involved, know that we are doing our absolute best to protect young people online as both consumers and producers.
Well, that actually brings me to the last question, which is from the audience, but I also came up with it. So shout out to the audience member for telepathy. So, we spent a little bit of time talking about your life, your early part of your life, but you've done a lot of work since then, especially around mental health and advocacy. So this person is asking, and I'm also asking, where do you sort of see the impact of your work the most right now? You can take that in whichever direction you like, but where do you see it right now? And I guess where would you like to see it too?
I am an overachiever.
Been there.
And so I'm trying to present solutions at every level of the issue. So individually, I'm excited that we just released the Artist Wellbeing Toolkit that I co-designed with different experts. To my knowledge, it's the first of its kind resource for young artists and their guardians to have the essential information to navigate the industry in hopefully a healthier and more sustainable way. Then, beyond the level of the individual, I'm working on my capstone project for my 7th certification to be a mental health coordinator for productions. So I will, it's so cool. It's so cool. Yeah. And these claps get shared with the Association of Mental Health Coordinators because they've been doing this work. And I now, I'm training with them alongside them. And we'll be able to help bring these stories to life in hopefully more ethical ways for everyone involved, including thinking about your experience consuming the media. And then legislation-wise, I that feels like such a long game. I'm surrendering to that reality. But I feel hopeful that over the next 5 to 7 years, I think the sociocultural conversation around this will be shifting quite a bit. I think my peer Jeanette McCurdy's book, I'm Glad My Mom Died, set the stage for some of it, or continued the conversation. I'm hoping that this carries the torch as far as possible. And so I think right now I'm committing to 5 to 7 years of like, what can I do? And then I want to make sure that I'm not just kind of reenacting my own trauma by trying to fix everything, and until it's fixed, I can't leave. Yeah. So I'm giving myself hopefully like a mindful end date to start looking into how I can, maybe train up the next generation to carry the torch.
But you feel hopeful.
I do feel hopeful, but you have to hope with your feet. Yeah. And that is a quote I can cite.
All right.
Desmond Tutu said, "Pray with your feet," or at least I think he said, "Pray with your feet." And so it has to be coupled with action. And I know that I'm living into the action, so I feel hopeful. And I'm surrounded by the people who are on the ground. And that's, the beauty of like being in community, organizing spaces, mutual aid networks, where you're like, okay, there is evidence of how this can operate. All the more reason to get involved. Have I convinced you?
See, we are ending on an upper, not a downer.
That's right.
So thank you, Alyson Stoner.
A legal upper. Let's clarify.
Yes.
Last name Stoner. You got to be careful with me.
I know. So true. Well, thank you so much, and thank you all for coming out
Thank
tonight.
you. And thank you to Kalyani.